free of worry of reprisals and persecution. We pray for those around the world who are wary of opening their doors to strangers and who are always worried about the government intervening. We pray for those who are persecuted for your name and ask for your Spirit to be especially with them. And we pray for your Spirit to be with Dr. Cafferky this morning as he shares with us and today. And we thank you that you are our amazing sovereign God. In Jesus' name we ask these things. Amen. Thank you, Dr. Cafferky.
How's the volume? Good? Okay, great. So throughout this presentation this morning, I'll have different memes up here. This is for two reasons. One, I need to get a drink, a little break, and allow you to be able to kind of get a break from hearing Bryan's voice. So this says, this is me before learning about triangles and seeing this as 100% someone else's issue and wondering, is this my problem to fix? So that's one of the big questions we'll be asking this morning. If it's someone else's problem, is it therefore also our problem to fix? It ran into my family until it ran into me. We've been talking last night about behavior patterns that have been passed down from generation to generation, and today we're continuing this idea that there's these patterns in our families, in our relationships, and patterns in everything that we do, and we can potentially change some of those patterns and act and behave in new ways. So by the end of this seminar, you should be able to understand the formation, attributes, and dynamics of relational triangles. You should recognize your own role and position in those triangles, and we're going to cover all that this morning. And in the afternoon, we'll talk about the instability of the triangle and how we can detriangulate ourselves. This is definitely going to be more of a paradigm, hopefully shifting presentation about how to understand relationships. It's not just about how to resolve conflicts, it's about how to understand what's happening. Okay, so tell me what you see in this picture. What do you see? One kid trying to feed the other. Okay, good. What else do we see? Someone doing it for him. Okay, so I'm imagining these are twins, and this looks like dragon fruit to me. So this individual helping this person, this is a nice thing to do, right? To help out your brother, that's a nice thing to do. What happens if this pattern continues from one day to the next week, to the next month, from 1 year to the next year, and this becomes a pattern? What's going to happen to these two individuals? One becomes dependent on the other. One might become tired of their job. At first, this person may like this because I'm helping out my brother. This is a nice thing to do. I feel good about myself because I'm helping someone I care about. And this person thinks, wow, this is so great. I have a brother who cares for me and is able to feed me. This is so nice. So each person's getting what they need, right? But if we extend this out over a long period of time, this person's going to be tying this person's shoes, helping them brush their teeth, feeding them. I have a 5-year-old daughter right now, and in a few years, let's say 10 years, she's 15, she's going to give me a call as a junior in high school and saying, Dad, come right now. I need to tie my shoes. And my whole life, you've been tying the shoes for me. And I just got out of physical education class, gym class, so I have to run there, park my car, run up to the gym, knock on the locker room door so she can come out so I can tie her shoes, she can go to her next class. Sometimes when we are helping other people, we're actually enabling them and robbing them of the opportunity to struggle and learn some of these things for themselves. And sometimes in our Christian world, we think it's a good thing to help other people, which it is. But sometimes we need to be thinking about, okay, am I helping or am I enabling? Am I over-functioning in our relationships? And really think about this. So the purpose is to present this idea of relational triangles to you this morning, and then later on this afternoon we'll talk about if the triangle is stable or unstable. And as I'm speaking to you now, I am a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of California, but I'm not speaking to you as a therapist right now. I'm speaking to you more of a family life educator describing triangles, and this is important because if there's an issue of safety or well-being, you might need to adjust your understanding or approach of relational triangles. But when safety and well-being are not on the table, we're not worried about that, we can move forward with this new understanding. Because oftentimes, We want to be the hero coming to the rescue, and then we accept the invitation to get involved in other people's unresolved conflict, and then we have no more emotional capacity to handle our own business because we spend so much time dealing with other people's problems, and we don't have enough left over for my own. So, when I talked with Vince before coming, he said that everyone was on the same page about what their favorite thing to talk about when it came to families was. So I'm hoping this is actually the case. So I want you to think in your mind, try and think about what is my favorite thing to talk about when it comes to families. Give you a moment to try and capture that in your mind. What is your favorite thing to talk about when it comes to families? And we're all going to say it at the exact same time. And we're going to see if Pastor Vince promised, if you're able to deliver on this promise. So think about what is your favorite thing to talk about when it comes to families. And on the count of 3, we're going to say it all at the same time. Ready? 1, 2, 3. In-laws. He said in-laws. So, now this story in Genesis 27, this says Jacob's deception. This is the story when Jacob deceived Isaac. Now this little summary, Jacob deception, this is obviously not in the original Hebrew text. This was added later to help us understand. And if we know the story, we know that maybe a better description would be Rebekah's manipulation of Jacob to deceive her husband out of the blessing. And also this chapter break right here, 27, is also artificially inserted into the text. So if you know the story, now it came about when Isaac was old and his eyes were too dim to see, that he called his older son Esau and said, this is his preferred son, older son Esau, and said, my son. And he said to him, here I am. Then Isaac said, behold now, I am old and do not know the day of my death. Now then, please take your gear, your quiver, and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt some game for me, and prepare a delicious meal for me such as I love, and bring it to me that I may also eat, so that my soul may bless you before I die. So, Rebekah's listening to this, right? She's listening, and she calls her favorite son, Jacob, come over here. I have a plan. I have a plan. Behold, this whole concoction, this idea, what happened next was all Rebekah's idea, right? And Jacob did a really good job deceiving his father. And after this all came about, we see what happens later. We know Esau gets upset, and then Jacob has to run away. So the question for you this morning is, why is it that this whole deception thing was necessary, quote unquote? Why was this necessary for this family? Why did Rebekah feel like this was the best course of action?
A means to an end.
Okay, what was the end?
The blessing.
The blessing. And why did she want the blessing? Yes, God had already told her, right, that the older would serve the younger, right? And at this point in time, Jacob's already deceived his brother, tricked his brother, traded a bowl of stew and bread for the birthright. And if Jacob can get also the blessing from his father, Jacob will, on all intents and purposes, be the eldest son of the family with both the blessing and the birthright, so that Rebekah can live out the rest of her days in financial security with her favored son, right? But there's something else that's also happening here. Something else, another reason why she's doing this. Any ideas?
A history of deceit.
History of deceit. Definitely she learned this behavior pattern in her own family of origin. We see later on Laban is cut from the same cloth.
There was a concern over Esau's choice.
There was a concern over Esau's choice for wives. The story doesn't start here at chapter 27, verse 1. These numbers are put in later. The story actually occurs in the previous verse. So it's not once upon a time Isaac called his oldest son. It's once upon a time Esau was 40 years old and he married Judith, the daughter of Beri the Hittite, and Basemath, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, sweet names, and they brought grief to Isaac and Rebekah. That's the baseline. Once upon a time, the daughters-in-law brought grief to Isaac and Rebekah. That's how the story actually starts. And then when Isaac sees his favorite son, calls him to him, and that's how the whole thing happens. So this is the baseline, that the grandparents are not getting along, well, I guess parents right now are not getting along with their daughters-in-law. This is what Rebekah is upset about. So after the whole deception, Esau held a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing which his father had blessed him. And Esau said to himself, the days of mourning for my father are near. Then I will kill my brother Jacob. So this is one line, Jacob says this, I'm going to kill my brother. Esau, thank you. Esau says, I'm going to kill my brother. Let's see what Rebecca does. Rebecca takes this one line and she amplifies it. She makes a huge deal out of it. Look what she does. She calls Jacob to her and she says, "Behold, your brother Esau is consoling himself concerning you by planning to kill you." That's definitely what Esau said. But let's see how big she makes this. Then she says, "Now then, my son, obey my voice and arise. Flee to Haran to my brother Laban. Stay with him a few days until your brother's fury subsides, until your brother's anger against you subsides, and he forgets what you did to him. Then I will send word and get you from there. Why should I lose you both in one day?" So she takes one line, she makes it a huge deal and says, "You got to get out of town right now. In fact, go back to my family where I came from." And then she turns around the very next verse and she talks to Isaac and she says, "I'm tired of living because of the daughters of Heth, my daughters-in-law. If Jacob takes a wife from the daughters of Heth, like these from the daughters of the land, what good will my life be to me?" So Rebecca's saying, this is a huge deal, you got to get out of town. "Hey, husband, please tell my favorite son to get out of town." She's trying to make sure that everyone is going to get Jacob out of town. Why? If Jacob can go back to where she grew up and grab a wife from her family of origin, then she won't have to deal with family differences, right? I want a daughter-in-law that understands the way I do things, that can run the tent hole the same way I do, that cooks the way that I do, that has the same manners and values that I do. Go find someone like that, because I have so much challenges with these others' daughters-in-law that I don't like. That's what's driving this. The whole deception is driven because she can't get along with her daughters-in-law.
So do you think she's just really self-centered?
Do I think she's self-centered? I think she definitely has ideas about how things should be done. And in fact, I don't know if there's time. I'll spend 1 minute. This pattern of a child trying to make decisions on behalf of the family is not just new to her. If you look at previous story of the head servant going to try and find a wife for Isaac, the patriarch of that family, the father of Laban and Rebekah, doesn't talk very much in the story. In fact, the head servant talks more to Laban and the mother and to Rebekah. The father's more just a figurehead, and other people are making decisions in the family. So I think this is actually happening the same thing here. Here we have this mother, Rebekah, also trying to make decisions on the family and not really necessarily including the patriarch. Yes, question?
Didn't she become the matriarch of the family?
Yeah, so she's the matriarch of the family, but she's trying to pull all the strings to get what she wants. Yeah, yep. So she could have prayed about it. She could have applied the Matthew 18 principle with the daughters-in-law. She could have held a family meeting with Esau and the daughters-in-law and how do we work this out? She could have agreed to disagree. Instead, Rebekah's sweet plan was to convince her favorite son to dress up in a goat skin, to swindle the blessing from her legally blind husband, and then scare Jacob out of town to obtain an approved wife from her family back in Padamaran. That was her plan. Not a very direct way of dealing with the issue, right? Because where is the issue? Where is the unresolved conflict? Between her and her daughters-in-law. But she's not dealing with that. She's going in a roundabout way, triangling other people. This is how we often do things. Trying to work the system, trying to find other solutions instead of actually dealing with the unresolved conflict. So here's the story of when Laban, we know a little bit about Laban, right? Laban is someone who's interested in money. He's interested in wealth. In fact, when the head servant went to go try and find a wife for Isaac, Rebekah goes back and tells Laban about all this, and Laban runs out to meet the person when he hears about all the camels that the head servant brings. So basically, Laban becomes interested because this head servant comes with a fleet of Teslas, and now he's interested in kind of like ingratiating himself with this person because he wants to have access to this wealth. So we know that that is what Laban is interested in, and we know Rebekah is also interested in having herself attached to her favorite son, which will now have the wealth and the blessing. So it's not too far from distant from her brother. And we know that when they sent away their sister Rebekah, there's the whole idea that the brother and the mother are the ones who are speaking and making the decision, but the father's not involved. And so what this means is, in this family of Laban, other people are making the decisions, not necessarily the father. And so Rebekah is just doing the same exact thing. Okay, detriangling is what we're talking about today. It's probably the most important technique when it comes to family systems therapy. As a family therapist, I'm thinking about triangulation all the time when I'm in a room with an individual or partners or a family, but this also shows up in my daily life as well. With my students, with my colleagues, with my wife, with my daughters, with my family, with my neighbors, with my friends. Triangulation is all around us, and if you don't know about it, you don't know what's happening. So I'm hoping to kind of lift the veil into what's happening when it comes to our relationships. If you like math, you can figure out the number of triangles in a room. If there are 3 people, you do this formula, there's 1 triangle. If there's 4 people in a room, there's 4 triangles. If there's 5 people in a room, there's 10 triangles. If there's 8 people in a room, 56 triangles. If there's 10 people, 120. If there are 300 people in a room, there's 4.5 million triangles. So any 3 people in a room creates a triangle. Not all triangles are active, but they are there. And there's a potential for passing anxiety around the triangles. So we're going to talk about 4 different scenarios in different families to understand how triangles work. First scenario, on the left-hand side, we have 2 people, and the squiggly line indicates conflict. So 2 people have conflict. This is an unstable dyad, and what I'm saying here is these 2 people have conflict. On the right-hand side, this straight line means no conflict. Now watch what happens. By adding a third party here, or adding a third party here, this can actually change what's happening between these 2 other people. So there are 2 people who get along, so 2 people who don't get along because they disagree theologically about something in Revelation. But when there's a new person who attends Sabbath school and this new person brings coffee with them, these 2 people can agree that coffee's bad, even if they disagree theologically. So they agree that coffee is bad, so because of this third person coming into their midst, they suddenly agree to, okay, now we're getting along, we have a common enemy. Previous situation. We have 2 people who are getting along, and let's say a baby comes into the situation. All of a sudden, this baby who is dependent on them for time, nurture, et cetera, this takes more of their energy, and they stop investing much in their relationship. So now there's some conflict between them just because this new baby came into the relationship. So the addition of a third person can change what happens between these 2 other people. Whether there's conflict between these 2 people or they get along well, the addition of a third person or a third party can change what happens between the 2. How are we feeling about this idea? Okay. And it's not just a person. The third party could be a hobby, an addiction, a dream, a career, a pet. Let's look at the next scenario. We have these 2 people who are arguing because they're watching something on the sports. Let's say one of them is a Los Angeles Lakers fan, the other one is a Sacramento Kings fan, and they do not get along while they're watching the game. But as soon as the game is done, they can go back to being friends again. But while the game is on, they're fighting over what's happening in the game. Likewise, these 2 people, let's go back to the same Sabbath school situation. We have a very skilled Sabbath school leader who's an expert at facilitating conversation, making sure that not one person is dominating all the discussion, and making sure that everybody in the room gets a chance to share their perspective. But unfortunately, this person ends up moving to Alabama. And when this skilled facilitator moves away to Alabama, these 2 people who were getting along when the facilitator was here suddenly start to experience some conflict because there's not someone else there to help manage their relationship. So what this means is the removal of a third person or third party can also change what happens between those 2 other people. So regardless of whether or not 2 people experience conflict or not, the addition of or the removal of a third party can change what happens between those 2 people. So we often think here in America that relationships are about 2 people. 2 people are in a romantic relationship. But relationships are not just about 2s. I want you to entertain this idea that relationships are about 3s, not 2s. Because the removal of or the addition of a third party can change the way that 2 people interact. If you were having lunch at some, what's that famous bakery that's supposed to be down here in Santa Helena? What model? Okay, Bouchon. Okay, so there's several. Okay, sorry, I didn't know that. Okay, so you're at one of these famous bakeries, and you're sitting down, and Pastor Vince walks in, and he sits down next to you. That might change the way that you two are interacting, because Pastor Vince is here. And when he leaves, you might go back to continue your conversation, engaging the same way when he leaves. So when other people are nearby and in our orbit, that can change what happens between two people. Triangles are the basic building blocks of emotional systems. Is anyone an engineer here? Okay. Did anyone ever make a bridge out of popsicle sticks or toothpicks? No? Okay, so some people, okay, yes. So tell me, when you had to make a bridge out of popsicle sticks and toothpicks, did you ever use a triangle structure within that? Okay, why would you use a triangle structure? Strength. Tell me more about strength.
Reliance upon another factor to create that strength.
Yes, because the weight on the triangle can be dispersed to the other sides, so the triangle can withstand much more weight than if it was just one or two popsicle sticks independently by themselves. We use the same sort of idea when it comes to our relational triangles. Relationships are about threes. So triangles are the emotional building block of these different emotional systems. So a relational triangle is a three-person emotional configuration when one relationship gets intertwined with the addition of a third person, object, party, dream, substance, hobby. So I want you to start thinking about relationships as threes, and these are the building blocks, not twos. And if you can do that, then we'll be able to see how there's interlocking triangles. We have two people over here, and I'm the third person in the triangle. And if there's some distress here, I'm also part of several different triangles at the same time. So I can experience distress over here, and I can take that distress, and I can dump it over here to this triangle. And people in this triangle are also at the same time simultaneously in other triangles. So anxiety can be passed from triangle to triangle to triangle to triangle. So two people experiencing some conflict, and when the distress gets too great, they try and find a receptacle, someone to come and help them handle their distress. So they rope in a third party because they can't handle the distress they are experiencing. So they bring this third person into their relationship so they can experience more stability. Because if I can vent with someone else or complain about what's happening over here, then I feel a little bit better. So distress in the dyad between two people, and one person passes their anxiety down the line to this third person, and this third person acts as a release, or a trash can, or a scapegoat, or an ally, someone to help carry some of the tension that these two people over here can't handle by themselves. So now three people are carrying the tension, not just two. And what happens is, when you pass anxiety down like this, it becomes this multi-level modeling scheme to pass on the distress to more and more people. And so basically, when we are roping other people into our distress, we're trying to get them to be involved so that we can feel calmer. Oh, someone listens to me. Oh, someone's on my side. Oh, someone gave me advice, because there's too much tension between me and the other person. So to the extent that you become responsible for or try to change the relationship of two others, the more you'll experience the stress of that relationship. So what does this mean? There's two people who experience distress, and they come to Bryan for help. And the more I get involved in their distress, the more I start to try and fix or become responsible for what's happened between them, the more I will experience their distress. So we have two people not getting along. An individual comes. One of them tries to rope this person into the situation to have them resolve the conflict. And the more this person gets involved, the more this individual will experience the distress of those two people. So the distress is here, but the more I get involved in their distress, the more I will experience their distress. If you've ever done me wrong, just know that my mom knows, and she doesn't like you. I don't like what's happening. I talk to my parent, I vent, and my mom knows and doesn't like you because she's taken my side. This other person has no idea I talked with my mom, but my mom knows. And if my mom ever sees this person, she has already formed an opinion of this person because of the narrative I've told her. So my mom, myself, and this other person are in a triangle. even though this other person has no idea that they're in a triangle with me and my mom. But I'm trying to give some of my distress to my mom so she can hold it and she can champion me and be on my side, and we have a common enemy over here. Anxiety is like a hot potato. I don't like holding hot potatoes for very long. So if I have a hot potato, I take it out. If I foolishly take it out of the oven without an oven mitt, I'm going to do this, right? To limit the amount of contact I have with the hot potato. I brought my daughter to swim lessons last summer, and it was a warm day, like 98 degrees, no shade, so the concrete was hot. She got out of the water and started doing this. Why? To limit the contact with the hot concrete. Same thing with anxiety. We don't like to hold it very long, otherwise it gets too hot, we don't get burned, so we try and pass it off to other people. So what happens is we can start passing hot potatoes around our family, and into the church family, and then to our work or larger systems family, and now all of a sudden there's a whole bunch of hot potatoes being passed around because nobody wants to touch a hot potato for too long. But we also have this social contract that if someone sends me a hot potato, I'm obligated to hold that hot potato and do something with it. But sometimes you don't have to hold other people's hot potatoes if they're not yours. The more I try and get involved in other people's conflict, hot potatoes, the more I will experience the distress of that relationship because I'm reaching in and I'm touching that hot potato. We don't necessarily have to pass hot potatoes around in the same way. Most people in relationships are behaving in response to the anxieties rather than to each other. We're anxious about something. There's some unresolved conflict. We are responding to that more than we are actually responding to the other person. And if we are responding to the other person, we are actually usually responding to their response to the anxiety. So we are responding to their response, not to them. So a lot of things we do in our relationships are patterned, and it's not actually about the other person. It's about unresolved conflict. Triangling is both an emotional process and an anxiety binding process that shifts the anxiety around the system. So it just shovels anxiety around. This emotional process, and it binds anxiety within that family. Some triangles feel stable, others do not feel stable. We'll talk about this afternoon. Anxiety is contagious. It can pass from person to person to person like the hot potatoes. And there could be this domino effect where one person experiences distress and they pass it on to others. If I say, fire, 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 we might look around, where's the fire? Because I'm upset, and that's going to pass like a wave through the whole room to find out what is the issue, because you're responding to my distress about the thing that I'm upset about. Triangles are forever and can outlive the people in them. What does this mean? If there's a church or a family, and there's an individual that is causing a lot of distress in the family, or at least we're blaming them for the distress, if they pass away or move away, that does not mean the anxiety disappears. If you were here with us last night, we learned that one of the main ways that the family of Abraham responds to distress and resolves conflict is to kick someone out of the family. Kicking Hagar out and Ishmael out, and then sending Jacob away, right? And then getting rid of Joseph, sending him down to Egypt. So these are all attempts to resolve the anxiety. But just because someone leaves or passes away does not mean that that anxiety disappears. It either goes latent and it's still present, or it gets redistributed amongst the rest of the family members. So just because someone leaves or moves away does not mean that the anxiety they experience with other people suddenly disappears. This means that a lot of the stress we deal with is not necessarily ours to deal with. It's other people's hot potatoes that have been passed to us. And hot potatoes have been passed down from one generation to the next generation, to the next generation. So we have some old hot potatoes we're dealing with. Whether it's behaviors that are trapping those hot potatoes in the family or unresolved tension. Because we know some families just experience a little bit more anxiety and tension than other families. And that new baseline of what we experience of the acceptable number of hot potatoes in the family is often passed down to the following generations. So most of us spend a lot of our energy working on other people's stuff instead of working on our own stuff. I had to move about a year ago. At that time, I had a 4-year-old and a half-year-old. And I had to pack up all the boxes. My wife helped as well. Pack up all the boxes and then move to a new place. I do not like packing my own things because I have to touch them. I have to decide, do I want to keep this? Do I not want to keep this? Or remember the story when I first obtained this? This has some unpleasant memories. I'm going to get rid of this. Let's just save it for later. Maybe I'll feel about it different. So this whole emotional process, touching every single article of clothing, all the dishes in my house, it's a lot of emotional labor for me. It's a heavy lift. I do not like moving my own stuff. You know what I like moving? Other people's stuff. I can go to their house, I can check out mentally, throw everything into a box, take it up, move to the garage. I don't have to think about it because it's not my stuff. Sometimes I prefer to deal with other people's stuff because it's easier, it's not as hot. Whereas my own stuff, unpleasant. I'd rather not use my emotional energy organizing my own room. I'd rather sweep someone else's garage. So, triangulation is actually useful in some situations. It can provide some stability in families. So this is important. Not all triangulation is bad. But the less that families are able to handle their own distress with someone else, the more likely they are able to rely on triangulation to help stabilize the system. Meaning, if Vince and I have some difficulty, if we can't work through this, the more likely we are to bring in other people. We might have a rotation of helpers that come and help us with our relationship. So we'll depend on other people to help us resolve our own anxiety. So what people want is not actually a solution to their problems. People want to feel calmer. They want to have less hot potatoes, but not actually get rid of the hot potatoes. They just don't want the hot potatoes on their plate at this moment in time. These are individuals who are juggling. Here's one person, here's a baton down here, and this person has 3 batons up here. So this person has 3 hot potatoes going. On the right-hand side, we have 1, 2, 3 individuals, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 batons amongst these 3 people. So 3 people are able to handle more hot potatoes than 1 person. We're seeing that? The more people you have participating, the more hot potatoes we can handle. Isn't that great? Sometimes we're not just handling hot potatoes. Sometimes we're dealing with more dangerous things, like juggling chainsaws. Or maybe we are in precarious positions in our family or in our church family, and we are still juggling hot potatoes, but certain hot potatoes we cannot let drop. Otherwise, it's going to splat on the floor. It's going to be a huge mess. And so we engage in the social contract where another person comes in, here's a hot potato. This is part of your responsibility. And all of a sudden, we start passing hot potatoes amongst everyone else instead of actually dealing with these hot potatoes. So in highly anxious and polarized families or churches, it becomes more difficult for a clinician or a family member to resist engaging in the triangle. And then when we get sucked in, our outside objectivity and intention to help them is lost because we're sucked into their stuff. If you have some family members that are dealing with some mud, some muck in their relationships, if you put a glove on to go and try and help them, you're much more likely to get muddy gloves and less likely for them to experience glovey mud. When we get involved in other people's stuff, we usually get pulled into whatever's happening and we experience some of the distress of their relationship. Are they helpless, or do you just want to feel needed? It can feel really good to have people come to you if you are the safe space for that other person. It feels really good to help at least for me. I enjoy helping other people because it makes me feel like I'm an important part of this relationship. I'm contributing to society or what's actually supposed to be happening. And so we start to tell ourselves narratives like they need me. They need my help specifically. I'm their pastor. They are my family and friend. It's my job or role or responsibility to help them. I know what to do. I've been down this road before. I'm a rescuer. I'm a helper. I'm a servant. I'm a peacemaker. I'm a hero. I know how to fix this. I know the perfect solution for them. Or I can take one for the team. So we develop these stories about our roles and our relationships, and we start to think that it's our responsibility to jump in and help them. It's a good thing they called me because I'm a neutral party and a great listener. Now, when I talk to the other person on your behalf, I'll also need to hear their side of the story, and I'm blessed to be the middleman. So I'm blessed to be caught up in their dysfunction, trying to help them, and I'm getting egg on my face in the process. When in reality, they want some help, but what they really want is just to feel calmer. They're just looking to someone to come and hold those hot potatoes for them so they don't have to feel the heat. Other times, they tell us narratives like, "You're such a good listener. You're so supportive. I'm glad I have you in my life. I'm glad that I can count on you. You're always dependable." Or, "We need a mediator in this situation. Can you please come help us mediate?" They might even say things like, "I'm just worried about sister so-and-so." Then they're going to pass on some hot potatoes. Or, "I need your advice. Here's a hot potato." They're trying to find someone to come and remove the hot potatoes from their hands. That's what they're looking for. They're looking for someone to come and help them. And so they'll tell you stories, and this will feel good because we want to help other people. We don't want to be rude, right? We want to be helpful. We want to be loving. We want to be supportive. And worry is often used as a way to justify gossip or triangulation. "I'm worried about so-and-so. Can you please come help me carry these hot potatoes?" Has anyone ever lived in a place where there's snow? Raise your hand if you lived in a place where there's snow. Okay, yeah, last week. Okay, yeah. How about living in a place where there's snow, capital S, snow? Yes, okay, so a couple hands. This right here so this is snow that's been plowed and pushed up against this on the sidewalk. Is this mound of snow, is this soft or hard? Hard. How do you know it's hard? It's had time to set up again, right? So this, depending how long it's been there, it could be hard as a rock, right? It's not the nice fluffy powder, okay? How about this situation over here? Is this hard or soft snow? Yes, okay. There could be some soft snow on top, but in the middle, it's probably compacted, right? How is this person who has this vehicle, how are they going to get out of their driveway? Floor it, okay. One way is to just go through it, right? But who's going to pay the price? You, right? And if you're going to chip away at this, you can get a shovel. It's going to take a little bit of work, though, right? Right? Okay. How about this situation? Everything's pushed up the snow plow, pushed the snow up right up against the garage, and if this is one of those garage doors that opens like this, you may even have difficulty getting inside to get the shovel to move the snow out. This next picture right here happened in Benton Harbor. There was a story of a man who went into this auto parts store, and he went in and he did not like how he was treated by the manager. A few weeks later, as a part-time job, he put a plow on the front of his pickup truck and plow different parking lots. He was called to this exact parking lot. So what did he do? He took all the snow and he pushed it up right against the door so that patrons would have to climb over this big old snow chunk to get inside the door. Snow plows. Do snow plows remove snow? They just shovel it around. Right. I want you to think of this. Oftentimes, we just shovel anxiety around, not actually removing it. And the more we shovel anxiety, hot potatoes around in our families, our church family, the more like it's going to get compact and stuck, and that's going to be the new baseline for the amount of snow we're used to in our family. It doesn't actually remove anything. We're just taking turns shoveling it around. If I'm over here and I wake up one morning and there's some snow on my driveway, if our houses are close together, I could shovel all the snow onto my neighbor's driveway. 15 minutes later, my neighbor comes out and goes, "Whoa, there's a lot of snow here." Shovels it, all of the snow, onto his other neighbor's driveway. Third person comes out. She comes out. "Whoa, there's 3 times as much snow as I thought." Her snow, plus my snow and my neighbor's snow. So she could shovel this snow, all of the snow, onto the other neighbor's driveway. Fourth neighbor comes out. Same thing. "Wow, there's 4 times as much snow as I thought." And if this is a cul-de-sac, the snow goes all the way around, and if someone's willing to, they could bring all that snow back to my driveway. We're just shoveling snow around, not actually removing it. Can you recall any examples in the Abraham story of triangles? What are some examples?
Esau,
Esau,
Rebecca, and Jacob.
Rebecca, and Jacob. Great, that's a triangle. Give me another triangle. Isaac, Esau, Rebecca. Okay. How about another one? Sarah, Abraham, and Sarah. Give me another one. Hagar, Abraham, and Sarah. Good. Any three people will be a triangle, right? It just takes three people to be a triangle. Some triangles are active, meaning we are all participants. Some triangles are more passive. They're not all active, but the triangle still exists. We don't actually need to participate in triangles, because the more we participate in triangles, we don't actually remove any of the anxiety. We just spread it around. The result is we perpetuate the practice of spreading anxiety to and from those that we love. So we take care of them by shoveling anxiety around, and it's going to come back around the system. Is there a hand over here? No hand. Okay. So we are carrying their anxiety after letting myself get involved in their business. We know we are carrying their anxiety when we are waking up in the middle of the night and we're thinking about their problem. We know we are carrying the anxiety when we are having conversations with other people in our family about their problem. We know we are carrying their anxiety when we're spending our own emotional energy trying to come up with solutions, brainstorming for their problems. And the more we get involved in the distress of two other people, the more we experience the distress of that relationship. And it may not necessarily be our hot potato to touch, but because we feel like we're supposed to, and it feels good to, and they tell us we're good listeners and we're so supportive of them, that's a real nice way to get us looped in and roped into what's happening. And what happens to the family system the more we get roped into other people's problems? People become dependent on other people to manage their anxiety. Two people become dependent on other people to handle their hot potatoes. Conflict is not managed directly, just like in the biblical story we saw before. And then nobody assumes responsibility for their own unresolved conflict. Instead, I just need someone else to come and help me handle it. And when that happens, issues and anxiety get stuck in the family like that compacted snow, and this becomes a new way of life. I just have to figure out a way to get my car around this big ice boulder because I'd rather not deal with it, or get someone to move it down to my neighbor's house so that they have to deal with it. And when this happens, this prevents growth and compromises our objectivity about what's actually happening because we're caught up in the snow. It's hard for me to think straight when I have snow and wet hands under my gloves and my toes are freezing. It's hard for me I just want to get this done. Oftentimes, our idea about how to handle anxiety is a survival response. How do I get rid of this immediate thing right now, and I'll worry about the consequences later? And we sometimes lose the ability to distinguish between whether it's other people's anxiety that we are brokers of, we're taking their anxiety and passing on to other people, or whether it's our own anxiety. And if we can't distinguish the difference, then it's just blanket anxiety and we all get to touch it. So, Bryan's been doing a lot of talking right now. What I want you to do now is get into groups of 2 or 3 or 4 and try and answer these questions. 1, what is a relational triangle? How do they work? 2, why are relational triangles, not dyads, the basic building blocks of emotional systems? 3, what are some reasons that we willingly participate in these triangles? And then what happens to us or the family system when we participate in these triangles? So get in groups of 2 or 3 or 4, maybe 5 at the max, and try and answer these questions. So if you feel spread out from other people, feel free to move if you want to join other people. If you want to stay by yourself because you're an introvert and need a little bit of space, that's okay too. But try and come up with the answers to these questions. All right, who wants another minute to answer these questions? Who wants another minute? Okay, you get another minute. Feeling generous this morning. Yep. I am. Yep. Okay, let's try and process the process. Did anyone find or hear a good answer to this first one? What is a triangle? How do they work? It's a three-person or object, three-party emotional configuration. And how do they work? We move anxiety around those three. This can be very helpful for families, right? It can help stabilize, right? So I'm not saying triangles are all bad, but how we operate in the triangles, that can be potentially be dysfunctional. Next question. Why are triangles, not dyads, not just two people, the basic building blocks of emotional systems? Anyone here come up with an answer for this next one? Why are triangles, not dyads, the basic building blocks of emotional systems? The Trinity, the basic example, okay. So 3 people can handle more than just 2 people on their own. So this is why triangles are the basic building blocks, because if there's too much distress between 2 people, they can find someone else to help them stabilize their relationship. Good. What are some reasons or narratives or justifications that we willingly participate in triangles? What are some things we tell ourselves? We want to help. What? They need me. Good. What else? I can fix that. I know what to do. Good. Yeah. Anything to rope us into we have a part to play in their challenges. That's really what's happening. Justifying it, making it feel good. All right. What happens to us and or the system, the family system, when we willingly participate in triangles all the time? What grows? The stress grows, or at least doesn't disappear. It just gets shoveled around the different driveways, right? And all of a sudden, the snow, the anxiety will start to get compacted and get stuck in the family system. And now this is the new baseline. I remember being in Bryan Springs, and it would start to snow end of October, and the snow would come off and on, all the way through March. I think it would be gone. Then more would come in April. And I'm wondering, when is this going to end? And now I'm just used to it. I'm just used to going, scraping my windshield every morning, shoveling the snow on the stairs, and life doesn't have to be that hard. We get used to it. This is the new baseline in our family. We have this many hot potatoes. Okay, so now let's kind of pivot and increase our awareness in how we participate in triangles. Like, what are we doing? How are we actually passing the hot potatoes around? The first thing we're going to talk about is our role in the triangle. We're also going to be talking about our position in the triangle, and this afternoon we're going to focus on the stability of the triangle itself, separate from the people or the parties in it. So first, our role in the triangle. What kind of roles do we play? There are 3 different roles that we can play. The first one is an individual who generates the anxiety. They bring their anxiety as their +1 to the party. They're bringing that as, hey, I have this anxiety, this hot potato, into the triangle. So they generate the anxiety. Next person could amplify it, and the third role is to dampen it. Either you generate, you amplify, or you dampen it. In the previous story, we saw Rebecca both generate the anxiety and also amplify it. So we can do more than one role, and not every triangle has all 3 roles represented. Not every triangle has 1 generator, 1 amplifier, 1 dampener. Sometimes there are no dampeners. Or maybe I start to generate, and someone else amplifies, and another person amplifies, and then they pass that on to another triangle. So we can generate, amplify, or dampen. The generator means you're bringing the unresolved conflict to the attention of other people. You want other people to know that this is an issue. I want some help with this. So you're looking for some relief from the distress you're experiencing. That's the generator. The amplifier is catching that anxiety and making a big deal out of it. Sometimes we think we are not amplifying. We think we're minimizing it, But in minimizing someone else's problem, we are actually amplifying it. Let's imagine there's a 11-year-old boy, and he comes to his father or his mother, and he comes in, he shuffles in, and he says, "Dad, I'm getting bullied at school." So, if this child's getting bullied at school, it probably didn't happen just this one day or this one week, right? Bullying is a pattern. And finally, this boy, after so much of this pattern, has decided to come to their caregiver to get some help. This is a brave thing to do, right? Brings it to the caregiver, "Dad, I'm getting bullied at school." And if the father says, "Son, it's not that big of a deal. Don't worry about it. Can you just walk to this side of the recess?" Or just don't worry about it. In fact, there's only 3 more months of school anyways, and then you'll have a break from them in the summer. It's not that big of a deal. And you'll be in a new classroom and you won't see them. Like, get over it. Do you think that amplifies the anxiety? Why would that amplify the anxiety? Because he knows he can't get help from his dad and he's sad about it. So now he's had this courage to bring this issue to his caregiver, and the caregiver says, "It's not that big of a deal." Yes, it's a big deal. Otherwise, I wouldn't have brought it to your attention. So now I'm even more anxious because I thought the person who's going to help me isn't helping me. This is amplifying my anxiety. So the father is the amplifier in the situation, even though the father thinks he's minimizing it. Why is he minimizing it? Probably because he doesn't want to deal with the son's emotions when it comes to that. And the father doesn't want to deal with it. So let's say the son goes, "Well, that didn't help. I'm going to go to my mother. Mom, I'm getting bullied at school." "What? Who is bullying you? Tell me their name. In fact, tomorrow morning, I'm going to get in the car, and I'm going to go with you to your classroom. I'm going to stand outside the room, and you point out who the bullies are. I'm going to give them a piece of my mind. In fact, I'm going to call the teacher right now. Who's the principal? Where's Wendy? I'm going to call her right now." So the mother is also amplifying it, right? The mother and the father are both amplifying it in different ways. So you could be a generator, an amplifier, or a dampener. The dampener calms down the distress in a non-anxious presence. They reduce the anxiety, and they are not catching the other person's anxiety that they're bringing into the triangle. So what could this look like? It might look like 11-year-old boy comes in, and the adult goes, "Wow. I'm so sorry, Johnny. Wow. This is a big deal." Notice, this is a big deal doesn't necessarily mean it's amplifying it, recognizing that it's a big deal. "Wow. I'm so sorry. Okay. Oh, this makes me so sad. Okay. We can get through this. Okay. All right. How long has this been happening?" And start to explore this. And in doing so, the dampener is showing the other person that their anxiety is not too big for them and is willing to engage in it and is not scared off by it, doesn't need to minimize it, doesn't need to make a huge deal of that, come in and rescue them, but actually is able. And in doing so, do you think the son is going to start to feel heard, understood? Like, oh, now I have a safe place to go. So the dampener is creating a safe place. So when someone generates anxiety, the dampener is creating a safe place for that anxiety to come, and in doing so, changes what's happening to the anxiety in the triangle. And these are often subconscious roles. We're not even thinking about that we're doing this. We're generating, we're sharing it to another triangle, we're amplifying it. Dampener is usually the only one we're doing consciously. Now, as a family therapist, I have done each of these intentionally in different situations. So if I have a couple in front of me, and the couple comes in, and we've been, say, working on something for 2 months, and they come in and they're talking about something, and I might say, "You know what we haven't talked about, Gerald? We haven't talked about your cancer. Why is that?" Because they've been avoiding it. So I am generating the anxiety, right? Something they've been purposely avoiding. Other times, a couple might come in, and they might say, "Bryan, we've had a terrible week. We're so happy to see you on Thursday. And like, I threw a cup at him. I got so mad. Like, some F-bombs were dropped. We got really mad. We just need to separate. But the good news is we kissed and made up. We're okay now. But just say we had a rough weekend, but we're past it. So let's get back down to work." And I would say, "Hold on a second. You threw a cup at him?" "Well, yeah, but it wasn't that big. Hold on. You threw a cup that was like at him? Well, he had to duck and it hit the wall behind. Okay, so you threw a cup at his head trying to hit him. Is that right?" "Well, yeah. What am I doing? I'm amplifying this So they know that this is a big deal because they're trying to minimize it. Other times I'm the dampener. They come in, they just got in a fight on the way here, like, oh, Bryan, you need to help us. I'm like, okay. They're both bringing anxiety as their plus one, and they want me to catch it and save them and do something about it. So I might go, okay. Ooh, I'm just going to remain calm. Okay. Wow, so you had another fight. Okay, we're going to work through this. I'm here to help. My time is yours. All right, first thing we're going to do, I'm just going to try and slow everything down so that their anxiety has a chance to dissipate a little bit. I'm going to try and dampen the situation. So there are different times where I amplify or generate or dampen. Clinically, I do one of those things. But in everyday relationships, I don't really want to amplify or generate because I do those things already pretty well. I want to try and get in the role of dampener and be in that position. And people are going to come to you with their hot potatoes, and this is predictable. Before people actually bring you their hot potatoes, if you know they're coming, you can try and get yourself to a calm spot, regulate your autonomic nervous system, get balance, cool, calm, collected, so that you can be a dampener. So whatever anxiety they bring to the table, you're already there and you're not going to catch it from them. You're not going to react to it. Because when anxiety, stressful moment, is met with other people's stress, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. If it's met with calm, it can get smaller and smaller and smaller. Because anxiety isn't just passed from person to person. Calmness also spreads. So it's not just them spreading their anxiety to you. When you dampen, you can also spread calmness to them. Why are you dragging all that negativity into this triangle? Because it needed to be brought to your attention. You know I can't resist making mountains out of your molehills. This isn't even my molehill. I don't care whose it is, or whose it was, because it's mine now. So I hear other people's difficult hot potatoes, and now this is mine. I'm going to champion this because this is what I need to do. And I'm just amplifying, I'm accepting this, and I might go and generate that anxiety in another triangle. So, done with the role of the triangle. Now talk about our position in the triangle. The position is all about whether you're an outsider or an insider. Are you an insider to the conflict, or are you an outsider from the outside? So when things are good between two people, they can handle their business. But when things get too tense, they look for someone else to try and help them. So there's this push and pull of, I need someone's help, now I don't need help. Now I need someone's help, now I don't need someone's help. And they're going to go back and forth. And as the triangle becomes more anxiously activated, the outside position becomes more comfortable. What does this mean? It means this. Q and P experience some distress. They want to rope in the outsider to come and help them. The more this outsider is willing to come and help them and takes responsibility for helping resolve their distress, the more the outsider will experience the distress of that relationship. So, is it T's up here? Is it their conflict? No, the conflict's between Q and P. But Q and P want some help. This hot potato is too hot. I need someone to come and help me carry the hot potato. And the more T is willing to get roped in, the more they experience the distress and the heat of that hot potato. But T is the outsider. It's not necessarily their problem. So we need to think about, it might actually be good to be the odd person out. Because it's their distress. They're trying to rope me into it. It's not necessarily my distress. Triangulation is this anxiety management strategy. This idea that I have too much distress. I need to triangle someone else into it so that I experience a little reprieve from that hot potato, be a little bit calmer. It's not actually about resolving the distress. It's just I'm seeking comfort or less distress. It's not actually resolving the actual issue. So the outsider is someone who stays outside of the other people's business. Doesn't necessarily get involved. Now, some people like getting involved. Some people like getting involved in other people's stuff because it's fun to play with other people's stuff, just like it's more fun to pack other people's belongings. It's not fun to deal with my own stuff. So, last little summary. What is the difference between a generator, amplifier, and dampener, the different roles? Does a triangle always have all three roles represented? And then, what is the difference between the insider and the outsider, and which position is generally preferable? So get in your small groups and try and answer these questions. All right, who wants another minute? Raise your hand if you want another minute. Okay. I don't see any hands raised. That's going to be a secret sign between you and me that you want to go over these. What is the difference between generator, amplifier, and dampener roles? The generator brings the anxiety to the triangle. Great. What is the amplifier? They ramp it up. They react to it. They catch that anxiety, react to it, make a big deal out of it, right? Okay, what is the dampener role? They try to calm it down somehow, and how do they calm it down? By not reacting. The way they calm it down is by they themselves remaining calm. If you try and just calm down other people, calm down, calm down, calm down, you're actually amplifying it, right? The way you be a dampener is take care of yourself and calm yourself down. That's how you be a dampener, because you're not catching their anxiety. Good. Does a triangle always have all three roles represented? No. Good. Some triangles will never have a dampener, right? If you have three dampeners, that means nobody's generating anxiety into the triangle, so everyone is just cool, calm, collected. Okay. What is the difference between an insider versus the outsider, and which position is generally preferable? Outsider. Okay. What's the difference between an outsider and an insider? The insider is part of the conflict that's happening between them and another person, and they want an outsider to come and help them. Now, if you're an outsider, the preferable position is to stay an outsider. But there are some insiders who think they're outsiders. There are some insiders who are contributing to the problem, but they think that they are the outsider, and it's not my issue. That's another issue, right? We have an insider who thinks that their conflict with someone else has nothing to do with them, and they're an outsider. Well, they're not taking responsibility for their part in this. Maybe they're not intending to make it worse by their actions, but the impact of their actions, or what they said or what they did, actually might be making this conflict worse. But they think that they are an outsider, when maybe they have responsibility for something they're actually an insider in. So we have to figure out, am I an outsider or an insider? Great. Okay. Last thing we're going to do to prime the pump for this afternoon. I have a neighbor, and his name is Lou, and he has a beautiful backyard, way nicer than ours. Beautiful flowers, it seems like 20, 30 different types of flowers. Some of them are big as my hand, and they open up to the sun, and they're beautiful. Some of them are really small, delicate, almost like if you just blew on them, the petals would waft away. So you have some really big ones and some really small ones. Some of his flowers are red, some of his flowers are purple. So if I tell my daughter to go and take a picture of the purple flower, which type of flower is she going to take a picture of, the small one or the big one? I heard small, I heard big, most likely. Purple one, the purple one? So if I say take a picture of the purple one, would she know if I'm talking about the big flower or the small flower? She might know, but do you know? Why don't you know? Because you've never seen the backyard. Good. Then how do you know? So the other complicated thing is there are some big flowers that are red and some big flowers that are purple. There are some small flowers that are red and some small flowers that are purple. So the label of the color, red or purple, has nothing to do with how big the flower is. We are understanding that? So if I say the red or the purple flower has nothing to do with how big or small the flower is, in a similar manner, we're going to be using two labels this afternoon: stable and unstable. And the labels of stable and unstable have nothing to do with the amount of dysfunction in the triangle. You can have very healthy triangles that are unstable. You can have unhealthy triangles that are unstable. You can have healthy triangles that are stable and unhealthy triangles that are stable. So stability or instability has nothing to do with the amount of dysfunction. I'm going to do the same exact thing at the beginning of this afternoon to make sure we're on the same page. Awesome. Good.
Have you been blessed this morning? I feel stable. So we'll close with a benediction, and we'll have a bio break, and we'll invite in the rest of our church family, and then we'll begin our 11 a.m. service. Shall we pray? Father in heaven, we thank you so much for this important information and these concepts and theory, and we are so glad that you intend to get involved with our stuff. Thank you so much for reaching down to us and elevating us up to yourself. And now, as we move into our divine service, we pray for your Spirit to remain. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.